What if I told you there is a way to shoot 35mm film that is as easy as using your smartphone and which is often really cheap as well? If that sounds interesting, keep watching. Well, hey everybody, thank you for checking in once again and welcome to another one. So the cameras I'm going to show you today are probably the easiest way to shoot film. These were state-of-the-art cameras. These are all point and shoots from the 1980s. They are probably the easiest of the film cameras to use. They are as simple, very nearly, as using a smartphone. With the exception of one of these cameras, these are auto everything. Auto focus, auto exposure, auto wind, auto flipping, everything you can imagine. The market they filled was largely the family market. They were made for families who wanted a family camera, probably not particularly into photography as such, and just wanted something nice and easy and simple that would give good quality results time after time without the need to think. Well, now that technology is still available to us and they're still just as easy to use. Now, it's sometimes said that these cameras are a little bit of a risk because they're packed with tech, with 1980s electronics, and that will eventually fail, so it's said, and it won't be able to be repaired. Is that true? Yes, of course it's true. Like everything in this universe, these cameras will eventually fail. They were made to supply the needs of the moment. They're now 40 odd years old at the youngest, and they just weren't designed to last this long. There are little bits in them that might fail. There are electronics in them that might fail. So yeah, like everything, they will eventually fail. But they're still working really nicely now. So my advice is, if you want to shoot one now, don't worry about any of that. Just go out and get one. So that said, let's get into it. Okay, the first camera I have to show you today is this one. This is the little Olympus XA2. Now this is a really nice camera. It's got a fast f2.8. I think it's a 35mm lens, yeah, f2.8 35mm D Zuiko lens. It's probably a Tessar, as are all the lenses in the cameras today, most likely Tessars. I don't know that for sure, but they most likely are, because Tessars are a nice simple design and give very sharp, very good quality results. So here's the XA2. This is the only camera here that is not auto everything. It is manual load and it is manual rewind. There is a little winder on the top here to rewind your film when you're done. So this one's a little bit of a hybrid between auto and manual, but it is auto exposure. That's the nice thing about it. You don't have to think about metering, shutter speed, aperture, any of that malarkey. Everything on the exposure side is automatic on this camera, and the auto exposure works really well. These early auto exposure systems are sometimes criticized for not being particularly accurate or good, but I've had no problems with this one. It's been absolutely fine, and I was very impressed when I took it out for a spin recently. I ran a roll of film through it and it didn't get one exposure wrong. I think it pretty much exposed everything very nicely indeed. So as I say, this is a zone focusing camera. We've got three symbols, near, middle and far. So that's nice and easy in principle. In practice, I found that actually it did make me miss one or two shots. I did misfocus one or two shots. I must have fallen on the boundary between, for example, near and medium distance, and the camera just couldn't do anything with it, and it missed focus. If you use a faster film in these, 400 ISO and up, That will force the aperture to go smaller than it would with slower films, so you get increased depth of field. That will overcome that difficulty of focusing to some extent on this camera. The earlier XA1, or just plain old XA as it was called, had a rangefinder built in, so you can get pinpoint accuracy in focusing with the XA, but it is a little slower to use. The XA2 is zone focusing, very reliable auto exposure system, and a very small camera too. It's got this flash on the side here, which actually where's it gone? It actually unscrews from the camera, and if you're not careful, falls off. So there's a nice little flash. But without the flash, this is a really tiny little piece of kit, and you can just stick it in your pocket and walk around shooting all day long to your heart's content. A beautiful little machine. No DX coding on this one. You have to, I think, I'm pretty sure, set the film speed manually. Yes, there's the film speed dial at the bottom there that you have to set manually. So one or two things to dial in on this one, but auto exposure and a very good reliable auto exposure system. A manual wind. It's got a winder on the back here, but you know, if you've got a good reliable thumb, that's not difficult to do. So a great little camera, one that gives very, very nice results, and a great little lens as well. As for price, this one probably comes in around about £100 or thereabouts. I've seen them a little cheaper and I've seen them a little more expensive, but £100 is a good working ballpark type figure for one of these cameras. I got lucky and I paid £5 for this in a charity shop fairly recently, and you can get lucky too. The bargains are still out there, or you can just go to eBay or another retailer and buy one from there. The choice is yours, people, but a very, very nice little camera available. Mainstream prices available from around about £60–75 or so to around about £120–130, but a very, very nice little camera, especially if you can buy one at the cheaper end of that price range. Here's our most expensive camera for today. This is the Olympus MJU2. I bought this camera recently and I used it recently, never having used one before. I have owned them before and never actually used one, put film in one and battery in one and used one before. And I was extremely impressed. These are expensive cameras, and I'll say that straight from the outset. You probably know that. If you know anything about film photography these days, you'll probably know that these are rather expensive point and shoots. They've become the fashionable one of the number one point and shoots out there today, and these can be bought. They are expensive. These can be bought for around about £200 to £300 on eBay or your other favourite auction site or retailer. But whatever you pay for it, this is a superb little film camera. I was extremely impressed when I used it recently, and having used it, I've got to say I can see what all the fuss is about. What's it about? Well, first thing it's about is size. This is really tiny, a tiny little camera, and it will go into a jeans pocket, a trouser pocket, a jacket pocket, certainly into a purse or a bag, really, really easily. It takes up absolutely no space. Very, very small camera, and Olympus really are to be applauded for producing something like this. It's a beautiful little thing. If only we could get a digital version of this. I don't suppose the electronics would fit, but my goodness, that would be a superb little camera also. This one is film, so let's not worry about what there isn't. Let's look at what there is. It switches on when you open the cover, and if there was a battery in this one, the lens would just pop out just a quarter of an inch or so. It's not a big sticky out lens, so that's nice. Everything's auto loading, auto rewind. It does rewind the film back in the can, unfortunately, so if you want to develop your own images, that could be tricky. But auto everything, auto wind, auto rewind, auto exposure and auto focus. And it is an extremely accurate autofocus. I didn't miss one shot with this camera. It will go pretty close. I can't remember how close it will go now, but I think it's about 2 feet or something like that, or maybe it's even closer, about 1 foot. It's got a very good close focus distance, so it's great for, you know, it's a very versatile camera. It's great for going in a little closer if you need to. As well as having accurate autofocus, it also has extremely accurate auto exposure. And again, this one didn't get a single shot wrong when I ran a test roll of 36 through it recently. So this really is a state-of-the-art machine. This was as good as it got for point and shoots. They didn't get any better in terms of accuracy of focusing, accuracy of auto exposure than this one. This is pretty much as good as they get. It has, I'll just show you around the back, it's got a little panel on the back there, and it's got a button to turn off the flash. Annoyingly, super annoyingly, supremely annoyingly, you have to turn off the flash when you turn on the camera. The flash is on by default and I guess that shows that this camera really was made for a market that absolutely did not want to think about anything, even whether to shoot by flash or not. So the flash is on by default for that reason. It's easy to turn off, but I found it extremely irksome and extremely irritating. But there you go, that's just a feature of the camera. But it is a beautiful little thing, make no mistake. And if you want a 35mm point and shoot that is at the same time very, very stylish and fashionable, these really are very fashionable at the moment, very small, very easy to use, and very, very accurate in both focusing and exposure, this is the camera for you. So if you can stretch to a couple of £100 for one of these, or even a little more, this is the camera for you. The bargains, as ever, are still out there. This camera I bought recently for £5 in a charity shop, so I was very lucky there. You can be very lucky too, because the bargains are still out there. Not quite so much as they used to be, but they are still there. So, you know, you can bag one of these for quite a low price. But even if you pay full market price, you've got a very, very nice little machine, and you'll make some really nice images with it. It's very versatile, and it's a really great tool if you just want a quick point and shoot camera that is as easy as a phone camera to use. A very, very nice little machine. The next camera is one of the cheapest on test to date, but it, again, like the others, is a very powerful, very capable machine, and it's also a very good looking machine as well, I think. This has some of the traditional camera look. This looks like a traditional film camera. It's also got a bit of weight to it. This is a quality machine. It's obviously got a metal chassis, and it's obviously very well made. This is the Konica Autofocus C35MF, and this again is an auto everything camera: auto load, auto rewind, auto focus and auto exposure. It's got a very nice fast f2.8 lens, a Konica Hexanon lens. The Hexanon lenses was some of the finest lenses ever made, and that's no exaggeration. I don't know if you can see the coatings on there. We've got sort of bronzy colour, also a bluey colour. Very, very nice Konica Hexanon coatings have gone onto that lens, and this is an outstanding lens, make no mistake. The only thing that you have to set on this camera is the film speed. You can see the film speed indicator window there, so every time you put a new film in, you've got to set the speed on there. This one goes up to 400 ASA, and its lowest ASA number is 25, and that was to take advantage, no doubt, of the Kodachrome film, which was still on sale when this camera was on sale. So you could put Kodachrome 25 or Kodachrome 50 in here and shoot it just nicely. And it's important to mention that it does have a very wide latitude, a very wide range of ASA values. So 25, 50, Cinestill 50 you could shoot in here, right the way up to 400. So very flexible range of ASA, or ISO as it's called now, range. It's a very simple camera to use. We've got a switch on the top here to switch off and on. We've got film counter here. This one I think has some film in it, so I won't open it up and show you inside. We've got a little flash unit that springs up thusly, pressing this control here, so that's to give you a little light in your pictures if you need a little extra light. Here's the back of the camera. I'll just show you around the back, and this is the film indicator here, so we can see we've got film in here that's wound on, and part way through the roll there I think is a, there's a tripod mount here. All these cameras have tripod mounts, so you can put them on a tripod. I believe they will do longer exposures of certainly over a second. So you can do long exposures with them. This camera, I've got to say, it's a beautiful camera, but it is a clone, kind of a clone of our next camera, which we'll come to in a moment, and I'll show you them side by side. This is a lovely camera, and it's not one of the fashionable points and shoots. Therefore, it is one of the cheap points and shoots. It's a very, very well made camera. It's got a metal chassis. It looks like a camera, and it's very good to hold and to grip. You can feel this in your hand much more easily than you can this little camera here. So this one is much easier, much better to hold than the smaller cameras are. And I think, you know, if I was buying a point and shoot today, I would go for one like this with this sort of form factor, because I do think they're the easiest form factor for me anyway to use. As for cost, a camera like this, a Konica like this, will cost you from around £50 if you're lucky. That's the very cheap end of things. More likely around £70. That's there are quite a few to be found for £70, and there are also some that go up to £130, even £150, but those are at the top end. There's no reason to pay that unless it's new in box, never been used, then it would be worth it. But more generally, £50 to £70 for one of these cameras. A very, very nice little machine. And now I'll show you why it's a knockoff or a clone of our next camera. So let's look at them side by side. Here's our next camera. It's the Nikon L35AF, and there is the Konica just for comparison. I'll put them here just so you can see them clearly, and I hope you can see that they're very, very similar style. They've even got a similar name. They've even got similar lens caps. Look, let me show you the lens caps. Here's the lens cap for the Konica. So it's got a cover for the viewfinder and everything else, so you know that you've got your cover on there. You can't see through the viewfinder, so that's nice and handy. And here's the cover for the Nikon. And it's pretty much, sorry about this, I'm getting tangled up in cameras. It's pretty much exactly the same sort of thing. It fits on there in just the same way. So given that these cameras are so similar in styling, they're obviously competing for the same market. So one seems to be a knockoff of the other. They will both mount filters, by the way. Both this Konica and the Nikon will mount a filter, so that's really handy. And it's also a gesture towards the photographer who's a little more discerning in their photography. You can stick a red filter on there for black and white, or neutral density, or UV, or whatever you want. So it's great. in that respect, let's put that one over there. You sit there and behave yourself, and we'll have a look at the Nikon. The Nikon is much lighter than the Konica, and I suppose that's a good thing in that these are cameras that you may well want to carry around with you all day. This is probably my favourite point and shoot. This is a really fantastic camera. Like the other cameras on test today, this one has an f2.8 lens, which is 35mm, so they're all 35 or 38mm. The lenses on the cameras on test today. Nice walk around street cameras, nice walk around street sort of length. As I say, this lens will mount a filter on it. It's got a filter thread. I've got a filter on here at the moment just to protect things. You do have to take the filter off to change the ISO. The ISO is on a little dial there, and you change it with this control, the concentric ring that runs next to the lens there. I don't know if you can see that concentric ring here with the little thingies on it, and you just turn that. So that's how you adjust the ISO. ISO on this particular camera that I have goes up to 400, but there is a version of this camera, a slightly later version, where it goes up to 1000. So if that's important to you, get that one. 400's fine for me. It's auto everything, auto wind, auto rewind, but importantly, this camera, maybe this is the difference between a Nikon camera and some others, this camera does not rewind the film right back into the can. So if you're shooting a roll of black and white in here and you want to develop it yourself, you can do. You don't have to rip the can open and drag the film out. It leaves the leader outside the can, and that's really, really important, especially with rising film costs. I did develop a roll of colour film recently, but I very, very rarely shoot colour or develop it because it's just preposterously priced now. I usually only ever shoot black and white, and it's really important to me to be able to keep that leader out of the can so I can develop that film, and this camera will do that, so that's really important. With other cameras, other points and shoots, I've had to resort to taking the batteries out as it gets to shot number 1 on the rewind sequence. That sometimes messes up the computer electronics, as it did in the MJU, in the Mu 2. It took me a while to get that sorted. It didn't damage it, but it messed up the program, and it's obviously not good for the camera. So this camera is great for that. Auto exposure and auto focus. Auto exposure is very, very accurate, and I've shot a few rolls through this film, and I don't think I've missed a shot due to exposure error, nor have I missed a shot due to focus error. It's pretty quick to focus. And importantly, this camera is the only one with a meter inside the viewfinder, a focus meter inside the viewfinder. It's just a little needle. It goes from near at this end to far at this end, and it tells you where you're focused, far, near or middle or somewhere in between, and it tells you where you're focused, and that is an absolute boon. We need to know where we're focused. That's one pitfall, one downfall of the point and shoot cameras, is that with most of them, you haven't a clue where it's focused. With this, you do, and that is worth $1 million to me. That is a fantastic feature. It's got a great form factor, has this camera, and it looks like a camera, so that's nice. I do like cameras that look like traditional cameras. They're all quite disarming cameras for street photography, these ones. They're not intimidating and they're not scary, so they do let you do street that little bit easier. A nice easy switch it on thusly and off thusly. A little film counter on here. This camera uses AA batteries, as does the Konica. Actually, I must say, AA batteries go in there. This is the battery door. This camera does have a weakness on the battery door, which is where the tab here breaks off. So never just pull the battery door back, always push it down, and while you're pushing down, then pull the door back. And when you put it in, push down first, and while you're pushing down, then push the little door forward so it catches. That is a weak point, and it will fail if you don't take care of it. So take care of the battery door. This is one of the more expensive cameras on test here today. This camera can be found, well, at the upper limit for around about £250, at the lower limit around about £150. It's a little expensive. They can be found cheaper if you're lucky, and like all second-hand kits, the bargains are out there, but you'll only find those if you're patient and persistent, and maybe if you look around charity shops as well on a regular basis. Otherwise, it's 150 to 250 on eBay, but for 150, 200 quid, you have got an unbeatable, absolutely unbeatable, state-of-the-art point and shoot camera from Nikon, and I don't think you can really do better than this one. Right, I've got one final fast point and shoot to show you today, and it's this one. It's the Canon, I'm not even sure what model this is, Canon Sure Shot, and this too has a 38mm f2.8 lens, so this is a nice fast lens on this camera, and it's just the perfect focal length for walking around and doing a bit of street with. I love 40mm. I think it's the absolute spot on focal length for doing street. I don't think you can get any better than that, and this one is pretty much bang on. It's 38mm, but we're not going to worry about a couple of millimeters here or there. This is an auto everything camera like its brethren, most of its comrades here today. It has the form factor that I like. It looks like a traditional camera. It's got some of that sort of traditional camera feel. The lens cap is actually one of these newfangled modern slidey lens caps in two halves. Unfortunately, this one is actually broken. It's supposed to open with this little switch here, but it doesn't. This one is broken, so this is sort of from my spares camera pile, but nonetheless it serves to demonstrate a camera that is available. We can see the coatings on the lens there. Canon, of course, making very, very fine lenses and always being noted for fantastic colour. Those coatings on there, the blue purpley coatings you can see, those are the same color coatings you can see on some of the FD lenses, and the FD lenses are beautiful, and they were made around the same time as this camera, so probably similar or the same coatings. Again, it's an auto everything camera, auto load, auto wind, auto exposure, and auto focus with, of course, a built-in flash. This is the rear of the camera, and I'll show you inside because most of these cameras are similar inside. They mostly have DX coding, although one or two of them don't. I think this one probably does. There's the rear and the film chamber anyway. Here's the pressure plate to keep the film flat against the gate here. So it's nicely engineered, nicely put together. And again, this is a state-of-the-art camera. I've never actually used one of these cameras, I have to be honest and frank, but I've no reason to think that it wouldn't perform nicely and at least as well as the other cameras here. So a very, very nice little machine. This one too takes AA batteries, and Canon came up with a rather better solution to the battery door than Nikon did. Can you see their battery door here? It's much stronger, much more substantial, and much better engineered, so that battery door will last for a considerable time. There's no problem there like there is on the Nikon cameras. AA batteries, you can get those anywhere in the world. Take these cameras anywhere in the world and you will find batteries for them. The ones that use AA's are this one, the Nikon and the Konica. The Mu 2 uses a smaller CR123 battery, and the XA2 uses two little LR or SR44 batteries, the little, used to call them hearing aid batteries. But this one is AA, and you can get those anywhere in the world. So if it conks out, it doesn't matter where you are, you'll be able to go around the corner, go to the nearest shop and get some AA batteries. So that's something to be borne in mind, I think. The cost of one of these cameras, these are not particularly expensive, and this camera goes for a similar price to that of the Konicas. So it goes from around 50 to 60 pounds. I've seen lots of these. I had a look this morning, seen lots of these available at 70 pounds. So that's a good sort of ballpark figure for one of these cameras. But a very, very nice little camera, beautiful little Canon lens, auto everything. What more could you wish for? So there we are, 5 fantastic little point and shoots, ranging in price from around £50 to around £250 to £300. All of them without exception will make you very sharp, very nice images, and all of them are state of the art for point and shoot cameras. It was as good as easy photography got in the days of film. All are still available. They might conk out one day, but then again, they might not. So my advice is, if you want one, don't worry about any of the tech, just go out and grab one and enjoy it. So I guess that is about it from me for today. Many, many thanks for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you've enjoyed it, please do chuck us a sub. That would be appreciated. Many, many thanks to subscribers for your support. I really appreciate everybody who subscribes. Those little subscriptions are important, so thank you for that. Many, many thanks also go to patrons for their continued support. That really is a fantastic support. It really is appreciated. Many, many thanks for that. I couldn't make this show in the way that I do without that support, so many thanks for that. Thank you to everybody who has tuned in and watched, and if you're not doing anything too irritating, bothersome, difficult, troublesome, or anything else like that, next week at around this time, please do tune in for a spot more Zenography. Cheerio all.